Hello, this is Mr. Paranormal here. Firstly, thank you very much for clicking on the video. This is just a courtesy trigger warning that this video contains themes of sexual assault. And with that out the way, on with the story. In February 1977, a young healthcare worker would be brutally murdered in her own home. There were no witnesses, no leads, and no discernible motive. It looked like her killer had gotten away with murder. That was until the ghost of the murdered woman led detectives straight to her killer. Join us as we discuss the mysterious case of Teresita Basa, the woman who solved her own murder. It was the evening of the 21st of February 1977, and a couple had just finished cleaning the dishes after dinner in their Chicago Pine Grove apartment. As the two prepared to settle down for the evening, the boyfriend suddenly noticed the distinct smell of something burning in the apartment. As they searched the apartment, they couldn't find the source of the burning smell, which meant there could be a fire in another area of the apartment complex. This had the potential to be a big problem, as their apartment was on the 15th floor. As soon as they opened the door to their apartment, they saw smoke slowly filling the hallway. The couple ran down the hallway, yelling fire and banging on their neighbours' doors to try to get everybody out. The neighbours convened in the lobby and waited for the arrival of the firefighters. It was assumed everybody had made their way safely downstairs, but there was one tenant missing. Chicago firefighters arrived on the scene just after 8:30. When they reached the hallway on the 15th floor, the smoke was so thick they had to crawl on their hands and knees. They went door to door, making sure that everyone was out of their rooms, and as they made their way along the corridor, they saw smoke coming from under one of the doors. They rushed to the door and called inside, but there was no response, so they broke down the door with axes and entered the apartment. The source of the fire was a mattress burning in the middle of one of the bedrooms. For some reason the mattress wasn't on the bed, so it looked like someone had taken the mattress from the bed and placed it over a pile of clothes and set it on fire for some reason. When firefighters put out the fire and moved the mattress, what they found wasn't a pile of clothes, but the nude body of a middle-aged woman who had a butcher's knife driven through her chest with such force she was almost nailed to the floor. This was clearly no ordinary fire, and the lieutenant radioed the police, informing them that they suspected they had found the body of a murder victim. When the police arrived, they noted the apartment had been completely ransacked. Their initial assessment of the scene was that either the victim had been sexually assaulted and murdered due to her clothes being removed, or perhaps it was a robbery gone wrong. The mattress had clearly been set aflame to get rid of any evidence, and while the fire had caused significant damage to the victim's body, her face, torso and upper legs were spared from the blaze. Following a quick search of the apartment, the victim was identified as 48-year-old healthcare worker Teresita Basa. Her cause of death was a single stab wound to the chest. Following a review of the crime scene, the police concluded that Teresita knew her killer, as evidenced by there being 3 locks on the door and not one of them having been damaged or broken at all. This meant she most likely willingly let them into her home. The findings of the autopsy showed that Teresita was not sexually assaulted, so it was concluded that she had most likely been undressed post-mortem to throw off the investigation. One of the more significant findings was bruising identified on her throat and a fractured larynx. This indicated that she'd been choked before she was murdered and burned. The police were back at the theory of a burglary gone wrong, but there were no obvious suspects. The fire had destroyed all the evidence, except for a note that read, "Get theatre tickets for A.S." However, there was no clarity on what the initials stood for. The police conducted extensive interviews with Teresita's friends and family, but they were unable to generate any leads, and the case went cold. That was until 6 months later, when they were told there was a witness who could identify the killer. There was only one problem. The witness was also the murder victim. It all started when Remy Busachua, Remy to her friends, and a former colleague of Teresita Basa was resting in the hospital locker room after a long day at work. She was just about to fall asleep when she saw Teresita appear in front of her. She screamed and ran to the locker room, not knowing what it meant. A short time later, Remy's workmates started to see changes in Remy. She developed an almost obsessive interest in the progress of Teresita's murder case, and her behaviour and interests started to mimic those of Teresita. From being reserved, she became outgoing and talkative. She seemed to acquire an almost encyclopedic knowledge of the piano and classical music almost overnight. This was particularly unsettling because Teresita had studied classical music at university and was working towards a PhD in music at the time she died. Additionally, Teresita was an accomplished pianist. Remy's appearance slowly changed, and she more and more resembled Teresita. Even her husband, Jose Chua, had noticed the changes. A short time later, Remy started having dreams about Teresita visiting her. But as time went by, the dreams became more like trances that would strike in the middle of the day. When the first trance occurred, Remy was drifting off on the couch when her husband heard her muttering in her sleep. He went in to check on her, and she appeared to be in a lot of distress, as though she was having a nightmare. As soon as he walked in, he heard her say, "Doctor, I need your help. The man who murdered me is still at large." The voice coming from his wife spoke in Teresita's native tongue, Tagalog, and it was nothing like his wife's normal speaking voice. Sensing something was wrong, he asked her who she was, to which she replied, "I am Teresita Basa." In one trance, Teresita said that her killer's name was Alan Showery and urged him to go to the police. When his wife woke from her trance, she had no recollection of what happened, and they agreed not to go to the police, dismissing it as a strange nightmare. Then, when Remy fell into another trance, Teresita demanded to know why they hadn't gone to the police. When Jose told Teresita that they had no evidence against Showery, Teresita told him to tell the police that Showery had stolen the jewelry she was wearing at the time of her murder and had given it to his girlfriend as a gift. When they heard this, they dismissed their incredulity and called the police. Having nothing else to go on and curious to understand more, the detective invited the couple to come to the station. The detective indulged the incredible story, but was naturally incredulous about the possibility of the ghost of a murdered woman possessing someone to solve her own murder. But the more they talked, the more intrigued the detective became. They told him that Teresita had told them that the name of the killer was Alan Showery, and that he had strangled and then stabbed Teresita before describing 2 pieces of jewellery, a pearl ring and a jade pendant he had stolen and given to his girlfriend as a present following the murder. They told the detective that Teresita had even given them the names and numbers of those who could help identify the jewellery. This was of particular interest to the detective, as the name Alan Showery matched the AS initials written in Teresita's diary, and there had never been any reports of jewellery missing from the body of Teresita Basa. Following the interview, the detective did a background check on Showery and found that not only was Showery known to Teresita, but that he'd been having financial difficulties, and that Teresita had been helping him out by paying him generously to do small jobs for her. Co-workers would also confirm that he was planning to go to her apartment the night she was murdered to repair her television. The detective then contacted Showery's girlfriend and asked if Showery had given her any jewellery recently. She confirmed that he had and agreed to let Teresita's friends and family inspect it. They identified 2 items, the pearl ring and jade pendant described by Remy as belonging to Teresita. Showery was arrested, and when presented with the evidence, he broke down and confessed to Teresita's murder. He would be found guilty of the murder of Teresita Basa and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. So how do we explain the strange case of how Teresita Basa's murder was solved? Did Remy Chua know more about the murders than she let on? Or is this some of the best evidence of life after death? How else could she have known about the most incriminating piece of evidence? The jewellery that Showery had stolen from the body of Teresita Basa and gifted to his girlfriend. Whatever was behind solving the murder of Teresita Basa is likely to remain unexplained. We can hope that the spirit of Teresita Basa can now rest in peace. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, share and subscribe. We upload 2 to 3 times a week, so that way you won't miss any future episodes. And if you made it this far, thank you very much for listening.